When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Filmmakers Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk filmmaking, from indie film to studio films to high-end TV to documentaries and everything in between. How to get them made, how to make them, and how to try not to royally F it up. In a very, very humble opinion, I'm Giles Alderson and I'm coming to you from a hotel room in Munich today, or München, where I am prepping for a commercial. This week we are revisiting a beloved character and diving headfirst into the world of Bridget Jones, but with a modern twist. We're joined by the talented director who brought us Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy. It is Michael Morris. And Dom Lenoir, our beloved Primo host, sits down with Michael Morris to talk about grief within filmmaking, casting, why he wanted to make Bridget Jones, keeping the story consistent, working with working title, mood boards, visuals, Renée Zellweger, and tone. It's so interesting because Michael Morris's career has been a fascinating journey through not only the worlds of film and television, because he directed episodes of the critically acclaimed shows like Better Call Saul, Bloodline, Halt and Catch Fire, 13 Reasons Why, and most recently For All Mankind. I feel his ability to capture these nuanced characters, and he brings out compelling stories across genres. It's pretty impressive. So get ready for a delightful conversation with Michael Morris as he discusses his experience directing Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy, which is out in cinemas now. The challenges of revisiting a beloved franchise and the evolution of Bridget Jones, only on the Filmmakers Podcast. First of all, though, I'll probably play you the trailer if I can find it. I will play you that. The other side of that is Dom Lenoir chatting to director Michael Morris.
In life, there are memories that will never leave us.
I like you very much, just as you are.
But sometimes, those memories are suddenly
Bridget.
all we're left with.
Ah, Mrs. Darcy?
Mr. Wallaker. Why is your granny wearing pajamas?
Bridget, you're a widow with two wonderful children. My advice to you is put your own oxygen mask on first.
You just have to get laid.
Shaz is right.
Oh my god.
It's been 4 years now.
You're effectively a nun. A very, very naughty nun.
I've set you up on Tinder.
What's Tinder?
Mummy! Mabel stuck up the tree! We're going to die!
Everything all right, Mrs. Darcy?
Oh my god.
Hiya.
I've climbed a magical man tree.
Hello.
You can call me Rockstar.
Bridget Jones.
But you can call her Mummy.
Is that the tree, Adonis? If you don't shag him, I will.
How old are you?
28.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding.
I'm 29.
We are about to embark on an adventure.
You sure you're up to this?
I'm your girl.
Do you miss Dada sometimes?
I miss him all of the times.
Can you survive?
I think so.
It's not enough to survive, you've got to live.
Was that the Dalai Lama?
Just Harry Styles, I think.
Mr. Wallaker.
Now that is what I call a rebrand.
Did you have sex?
Did you have sex? Did you have sex last night?
Yes, I did. I had a full night of utterly mind-blowing sex, and it was amazing. Bridget Jones, it's time to live.
Uncle Daniel!
Miniature Darcy, what's the news?
Where are the ladies with the big...
Hair. Well, they couldn't make it, I'm afraid. They're washing their hair.
All three?
Well, they wash each other's, you see.
Very nice to meet you, Dom.
Great to meet you, Dom.
Pleasure.
Brilliant.
Take a seat.
Okay, all right. Is that mine? Or...
Yeah. No. What would you like? What would you like on the drinking side?
Look at that.
Excellent. I might partake in a glass of water.
Where do you like meat? How close do you like this in general?
What's that?
How close do you want?
Oh,
this?
that's
Is
fine.
Are we all right?
Let me just check the levels. Just say something.
Hello. 1 2 1 2 1 2.
That's perfect.
That's all right. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Absolutely fine.
Good.
So, welcome to the Filmmakers Podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
How are you doing?
Doing all right. This is just the very beginning, our first day in London, and I'm extremely excited to be, as you can imagine, in London with this film.
I know. I mean, it's got such a cult following around here, and I feel like we're in. This is definitely like the swankiest interview room. I mean, there's usually in nice hotels. Like I sort of came in about 5 minutes ago. There was like two butlers.
Oh my god!
Opened the door as we arrived, and then there's like these big sort of double doors because it's a podcast. Yeah, and it's very nice.
Well, I mean, I'm of two minds with all this stuff because my last film that I made, which was my first film, was the polar opposite of this thing. We were a tiny little, like, pure independent, driven by nothing but sort of love and sweat and sellotape. And I could never have imagined, being in a motel, let alone a hotel for a podcast. But then the other part of me is like,
was that to Leslie?
That was to Leslie. Yeah.
And was that your film debut as a director? Because
yes.
You've done so much TV directing.
Yeah. I was a theatre director first, and then transitioned into that kind of what you might describe as like hour drama television or cable drama television in America, and then went into film. But just to on the hotel thing. But there is, I realize, like a long tradition of sort of old world glamour with a certain type of film. You know what I mean? There's a sort of silver screen tradition, which Universal and Working Title and the whole group behind this, they really do it well.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to go to Working Title as well. It's always nice to sort of visit there and like see the wall of. I mean, they've just done so many good story films like over the years. I mean, you look at the list and it's like, oh, these are like 80% of the good films that have been made narratively.
Well, they have, to me personally, and I'm sure to you as a film lover and, so many other people, I'm not unique in this. They occupy a really important space, like in my head, as an English person who loves theatre and film and storytelling and all of that. I mean, I'm oversimplifying like mad here, but there was a time when English film was either really small and edgy and always like super powerful, but like really small and edgy.
Yeah, sort of kitchen sink sort of stuff.
Yeah, real kitchen sink. Or it was, massive and gorgeous and David Lean and Richard Attenborough, Merchant Ivory. It had a certain personality, but it wasn't until, for me anyway, or it was like Carry On films, And it wasn't really in my world until Working Title did Four Weddings and a Funeral, Notting Hill, and that run of Richard Curtis, Hugh Grant films, that you realize, you can have a really proper contemporary London story that can make you laugh and can make you emotionally engaged, right? And that was them. That's the signature for me. And so it was one of the real reasons I was so excited to do this particular film.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the kind of era of films. I mean, I feel like there's still people making it, and it's bespoke companies like Working Title. But like some of my favorite films, like obviously I love blockbusters and I love the sort of the real sort of indie grassroots sort of films. But it's those medium, Hollywood indie where they've got good casts, they've got well thought out storylines, but they've got a little bit of money to play with to make it at the sort of the level that you want, like a real sort of cinema experience. And that in the 80s and the 90s, especially the 90s going into 2000s, all those sort of Shawshank type films and all the stuff from Working Title we sort of discussed. There was so many of those, that sort of budget level and those kinds of films, and it's just lovely when you get a chance to see anything that's got that kind of humanity and richness.
That's what it's all about, right? And I remember when I first started taking meetings in Hollywood, sort of starting to sort of dip my toe from television. In television's an odd word as well, because there should be like multiple sort of German words to describe different types of television.
Das Television.
Das Television, our television. Yeah. But there were, I was very lucky. I happened to coincide with a bit of what they now call the golden age, because it was when a lot of, really, really quality actors were coming back into television.
Yeah.
Were not suddenly, and television itself, and it really was two things. We didn't need to get distracted on this, but for me, it was an influx of, it was like a perfect storm, influx of great stars coming to television, but being met by really great writing.
Yes.
Because the role of the showrunner was just sort of being developed. It used to be just like a little bit like, I have like 8 shows and, but then it became like a much more of almost an auteur role. So you mix that. And then on the crew side, you started to get really, really high quality cinematography allowed into the process. So it was no longer like, we're just going to shoot this direction and shoot that direction. Suddenly, especially as digital came in, funnily enough, which I think started to keep costs down.
Yeah.
There was less stress about you're shooting too much. So we were able to start to take more risks. And I think it coincided, to be honest with you, with widescreen flat televisions.
Yeah.
People started to invest in these things and started to love them in their homes and want to see beautiful things on them.
And also that richness of, sorry, I use the word richness twice, but like that storytelling level. I mean, the sort of things you get in like early Christopher Nolan films, like really complex plots. I mean, HBO's been doing it for a while. There's so many, channels and TV series that as well. But it really sort of came into its own with sort of high-end television.
Yeah.
This idea of just like really complex, well thought out, difficult, challenging, raw characters.
Yeah.
And it's sort of gone in a really good direction.
No one could see that coming as well, because as you said, like films were the sort of heart and soul of it.
Yeah.
Films were like, in lots of ways, back, I guess, in those days, whenever it was 90s or whatever, films were the novels largely.
Yes.
And TV was like comic strips or short stories, the best, And then
or regular television.
Then this flip happened with shows like Breaking Bad or with Sopranos or with The Wire, which is, sort of peerless still in so many ways.
Definitely, yeah.
And you suddenly realize that, wait a second. And by the way, England had done it with like Jewel and the Crown for years and lots of like big complicated shows, but you don't have to concentrate your storytelling into 2 hours. You can have it over 18 hours, right? So you started to realize, really complicated stuff is being told now on television, and movies sort of like at the same time kind of flipped into being, like for instance, I had a meeting with this producer who shall not be named, very nice guy working at a very big, storied company.
Yeah.
And I was very naive at the time, and he was like, what kind of movies do you want to make? And, instead of saying ones that make lots of money, which I guess is what you're supposed to say, I started talking about like Kieslowski movies and, this, that, and the other. And he looks at me.
Box office receipts of those aren't so good.
Yeah, like, Three Colors Blue, I want to make that. And he looks at me and he goes, okay, he says, you can make those movies, but you have to smuggle them into a movie about G.I. Joe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, I just didn't know how the world worked, And it felt a bit sad because I had been used to being celebrated when I went on television randomly doing Better Call Saul. If you say I want to do 3 Colors Blue or whatever, or white, whatever the right one was for the thing,
if you want 15 seconds on an insect crawling across the desert, you're going to nail it.
They were like, that's incredible. Let's do that, because they're really supportive of like sideways takes.
Yes.
Yeah. But the beauty of this film is, and to get back to your point, is I think there's something about the Bridget Jones franchise which is part of that golden era, because it's a film that by its very description doesn't force you to smuggle anything, really. You know, it's about a person. It's about a person living in a city. It's about a person living in a city with real life problems and real life kind of ways to solve those problems, which can be hilarious, as we know. But you know, certainly in this edition of Bridget, are not always hilarious.
I mean, let's start with that. Like, we're sort of, you know, getting into the meat of the film, but this is definitely like, I mean, I think everyone in the audience was surprised by the emotional weight of it in a very good way. Right. Because you sort of go in for a Bridget Jones romp, and you expect some comedy and a bit of romance and you know, some real, you know, life stuff to deal with. But it was a real interesting portrait on grief. Yeah. And you see it through Bridget's eyes, and you see it through her son's eyes, which I think is an extra sort of layer of, you know, really sort of fascinating, you know, engagement that you get from it. I mean, how did it start for you? Like, how did this project find its way into your directing hands?
Yeah, I mean, because it's not immediately obvious. You know, I've had even close personal friends say, like, how do you go from to Leslie to Bridget? Yeah.
Well, and your TV, which is sort of smart, you know, TV with lots of interesting ideas, and
this is to the credit of Eric Fellner and you know, his working title team, particularly Eric, you know, because early on in this process, you know, I should start by saying, you know, I had a very strong angle on what I would try and bring to Bridget Jones should I get the opportunity with this story.
Interesting.
And that to me is because...
So you knew it was floating around as a concept, did you, at this?
Yeah. I had heard, you know, I had actually met through like completely random, like Helen Fielding randomly. She had mentioned just in conversation that there was this, she had written one more book, you know, she had written this book that hadn't been adapted yet, and they were sort of thinking about it. But to me, and I said this to Eric very early on, I you know, I don't love pigeonholing anybody, and I think that's a important thing not to do. But I said that there are many directors who have experience of rom-coms and will do rom-coms, and you know, will do wonderful rom-coms. I said what I can offer, you know, what I would want to do is, I really wanted to deliver the comedy, and I want it to feel Bridget, but I wanted to do what I'd called a comedy of grief. You know, I wanted to, because I think in this film, and I guess the answer is very few, it's seldom that you have like a properly iconic couple. Yeah. And, you know, I'm of the Bridget generation, you know, like, you know, so I remember it from the first film very clearly. Bridget Jones and Mark Darcy are as close to an iconic screen couple as you can find, you know. And so in knowing the story, there's no spoilers on your podcast.
No, not really. I mean, we'd hope people have watched the film before we sort of discuss it. So it's fine.
Well, I won't spoil anything like specific in the film, except very early on in the film. I think it's the sort of the basis of it. You realise that Mark Darcy, you know, died 4 years before the start of the film. Yeah. So as soon as you get that information, I suddenly realised that now we get the chance to make a story about grief, because it's not just the story of someone who's lost somebody, which is already bad and difficult. It's someone that we've all lost, because most of us have a relationship in our minds between Bridget and... So what I wanted... I mean, honestly, I started to think about films like Truly, Madly, Deeply, you know, where Minghella was so brilliant at, you know, at being unvarnished with the grief and the loss, but also finding so much charm in the film. Or a more recent film, which I love, which Richard Curtis directed, full working title called About Time.
I
love that film.
A classic film.
I just want everyone to love that film, because it's sort of one of those ones that I would never say anything that they did snuck under the radar, because everything is very much on the radar. But that's one to rediscover if people, listeners haven't.
Highly underrated film.
Underrated and beautifully made. Actually, we share an editor, the brilliant Mark Day, did that film and this one.
You know, just going a little bit back to this sort of old cinema magic, but I think it does have a bit of that old cinema magic, and I think it's these people that wear their hearts on their sleeves, and they have that that aura of something so big. And I think both of these characters did have such a lot. So you sort of go into it with such a lot of gravitas. But I think also, like, I mean, kindness was the thing that kind of really struck me. I mean, I know it's sort of built into Renee's, you know, DNA anyway.
Yeah.
But like the film starts and it's the juxtaposition of her grief, but there's this kindness going on as well.
Yeah.
And like, I suppose how you deal with it. I mean, that's the inspiring bit. I sort of found, you know, the hook into this film was that approach of like, you know, she's not shouting at everyone. She's not being horrible. She's not snapping, which isn't always the case, you know, with grief. People manifest it in different ways. Yep. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit about.
Well, we can because that was where the comedy of grief for me kind of took shape with this material, which was, and it involves over the period of, there's a long period of development, you know, so to find ways to introduce this tone. I mean, I think so much of filmmaking is about tone.
Yes.
You know, because tone is a deliberately broad word that means everything from music to costumes to locations to camera style to film choices to everything.
Yeah.
You know, and
how long you're pausing on someone's reaction.
For sure, editorial choices, but everything that goes into it, acting style, obviously the words that people are saying, but how they're saying them and how you're covering them. So to develop that tone took quite a long time, and because it's not immediately obvious how you would take someone like Bridget, you know, who over the years has been in Thai prisons and fallen off ski lifts and all the great stuff that is really part of the DNA of this franchise, how you bring her to a place where it's okay to feel something personal. It's okay to get properly, hopefully, or to experience emotions and not feel like you'll be, you know, I don't want to manipulate anyone. I don't want it to be that kind of film. I just wanted us to feel, really.
Yeah.
And I think that comes from this wonderful tension that's inbuilt, which is Bridget is a joyful person.
Yeah.
She's not a depressive person. She's in a very difficult emotional state. When we find her, she's literally in her basement. You know, that's what it is. A movie not about living in grief, I think. This is why I think I have to be careful talking about it. It's very much about moving on from grief. It's about letting go, literally.
Well, there's no lack of acceptance. I think that's kind of why it really works. But I mean, obviously, you know, we cut into a point in the movie, so obviously there's different stages of grief anyway.
Yeah.
But she's owning it. Like she's, you know, I am sad, but I'm also, you know, she's also sort of focusing on the love, which I think obviously gives it the warmth as well, and it really sort of brings him in. But I mean, it would have been easy to have made this more like popcorn cheesy, and the flashbacks could have been a lot more, you know, prevalent and in depth. But actually, the fact they're stripped back has a lot more weight, and I'm guessing that was all part of the process as well.
Yeah, it was very much. I mean,
I suppose, being tasteful.
Yeah, well, hopefully, yes. And I think that what I wanted to show at the beginning and the way we're very, you know, judicious about how we use Mark, I think, in the film. But this is a woman who has developed a coping mechanism over the last 4 years. Is it healthy? Some would say no, but it involves feeling very close to Mark. He's not there, but she feels very close to him in moments where she's a bit freaked. She doesn't want to go out to that thing at the beginning, and there he is. You know, he's there with her,
like a comfort blanket. Yeah,
yeah, and that's what that opening kind of. I mean, the structure of the film is unusual, especially for a Bridget film, in that there's a pretty extended prologue pre-credits, and that was very deliberate too in terms of saying, I wanted to throw the audience right into her life. I don't want to do recap. I want to just have them play catch up a little bit. Well, we don't know exactly what's happening. We don't know what the dinner is that she's going to. We don't know, and then you do. Yeah. And it's only at the end of that prologue that she makes the decision based on what her memory of her dad saying to her.
And it's also nice because you're respecting, you know, the filmmaking process and her as an actress, and, you know, our sort of investment to go into her emotional side rather than like flinging plot, you know, across people, which in a way, like it gets you engaged. You know, it does. It's a really unique sort of way into her mindset and her sort of headspace. And then when the plot does happen, you know, you've got that extra sort of grounding.
You're built into
the whole thing.
Well, I mean, one of the great things that comes with this particular franchise is the quality, the level of actor that you're working with. I mean, if you were going to choose, I think, a great leading actress who would be capable of doing the kind of physical comedy, like classic physical comedy, but who on a dime, as they say, could turn into like a really deeply felt emotional performance. You're going to choose Renee Zellweger, whether it's Bridget Jones or something else, if you can get her, because she's brilliant at both. Very few people can do comedy at her level and drama at her level. And you pair her with Hugh Grant, and you pair her with, in this case, it was, extraordinarily lucky to pair her with Chiwetel and Leo. Yeah. But, you can tell right from Chiwetel's body of work how much of an actor he is. Like, he brings so much gravitas and so much, you can't do anything that's not truthful. Yeah. So I knew already, it was extremely exciting to go into this process knowing that everyone on screen is going to be able to support the project of being both a comedy and also an exploration of grief.
So let's talk a little bit about the development process, Working Title and your process as well, because you mentioned the book. Yeah. What in terms of how to start this versus the book. I mean, obviously you can't show every single page.
Sure.
That some bits need to be omitted. Some bits, maybe the way that you started it wasn't. I haven't read the book, but page one. So how did that process sort of unfurl in terms of picking what was the core of what ended up being the movie?
Well, Helen Fielding adapted her own book actually into a script, which itself became sort of a basis for what we ultimately developed into the film, the shooting script. Yeah. And it's a long process, and it was elongated even more by we had strikes involved. Remember all that? Everything shut down for a long time.
Horrendous,
yeah. It was very difficult, and it was actually due to the sort of brilliance of the Working Title development team led by Amelia Granger, who's done it she's been head of their development for 25 years. She's brilliant. And Joe, who is my incredible producer, like I honestly, if any filmmakers are listening to this, find your Joe. Joe Wallet in this case, but you want someone who is 100% on board with the tone that you're trying to create, because like I said before, tone is this all-encompassing word, and so it's not just enough, I don't think, for a director to say, I know what tone I want. In order to achieve that, it has to be across every department and across every choice. So this film would have been very different without Joe. But developing the script essentially is about interrogating, I think, every line, every beat, every scenario, every scene, and just saying, is it doing the thing that I want, or is it not? And
is it necessary? I suppose.
Yeah, for me,
is a big one, isn't it?
Because we could have four directors sitting next to each other, and everyone would develop a different script out of the same material. And so it becomes about endlessly playing the movie in your mind, and trying to say what is going to give us the right combination of moments, so that Bridget, we can see her smiling, but we can feel something else, or what's going to put her in a situation where she can no longer avoid the feeling that she's been trying to avoid.
And I suppose with your producer or the other end, like Working Title or the distributors. I mean, I suppose with Working Title maybe it's a little bit different because they're such a story focused company, but generally making sure that what the tone you're actually planning to make, everyone understands, and they're not in the back of their mind thinking, okay, well, we're making the next sort of popcorn thriller, for everybody, who's going to see it. It's going to be light, it's going to be fluffy, easily accessible. Those kinds of questions.
That's a big question. I mean, look, this is where there's a reason why Working Title are where they are, and Tim and Eric are
geniuses
at the top of that particular game, is because there's always a sort of, I think there's always a trust fall exercise of keeping control of, or wanting to sort of feel like naturally in control of the film that you're going to release into the world, but at the same time truly doing the thing that lots of people say they do, but truly doing the thing of trusting their director. You know, and one of the things Eric said at the very beginning was like, look, we really trust our directors, and you know, there's a reason why we want you to direct the film. And to me, in my mind, there was always this. It's not obvious to everyone, but there's a very straight line between To Leslie and this particular Bridget Jones. They're very different films. They you know, one's on the drama shelf and one's not.
Although you could argue it is on the drama shelf, it's just
it can be. It's
under the sort of a rom-com coat.
Yeah, I suppose so. But it's also like they're both women who have a very strong sense of themselves and their own identity, who have their own approach to sort of coping with life. To Leslie, it's, you know, extremely damaged and difficult. And in Bridget, it's not damaged and difficult in the same way, but they both are forced to reevaluate all of that. And, you know, and in both movies to sort of form some kind of healing bond with their son. And so, yeah, for me, it made perfect sense. It's just the challenge here was to do it with a sort of lightness of touch that could help it be fun.
So, I mean, in terms of like setting the tone, mood boards, is that sort of part of your practice early on? I mean, it's set in Hampstead, and I mean, I've sort of lived around the area for a long time and recognized 99% of and loved all the locations, but they do like it, that sets a very specific tone. It's like a, you know, it's a nice, charming hark back to another era without sort of feeling stuffy. Like it really does help, you know, the world that she all the characters inhabit, I suppose.
That's very important. And yes, mood boards for sure, you know, like endless visual sort of, you know, patchwork quilts of different things and combinations of different places. But yeah, like this was, so in some senses I was approaching this a bit like, I don't know what the word is, because I want to say like a reboot, but it's definitely not a reboot because it's all the same people that are in the movie, but everything else about the movie is different.
Yeah.
The previous three, which are, you know, have just done so much and they're so brilliant, you know, in so many ways, but they've really been sort of three installments of that Bridget. She's lived in the same place. She's sort of been in the same kind of whirlwind type. You know, yes, of course, they introduced pregnancy in the last one, but it was still sort of that Bridget, you know. But now we haven't seen her for a long time. She's got 2 kids. She's in her early 50s. She's living in a brand new place, brand new part of town. So there was an opportunity to sort of reset her life. And Hampstead, she's never lived in Hampstead before, and Hampstead became a very important part. And it sort of informed, or it started with a different kind of filmmaking style. There's a lot of handheld camera work in this movie, which hasn't been part of the language of the film before. And I wanted London to look and feel like a London that I grew up in London, that I would recognize. I don't always recognize London in film because it can be very shiny and very perfect.
Yeah, and also I suppose on the other side of it can be shiny and perfect, or it can be just quite concrete. And,
right.
And there's I mean, maybe I'm reading into it too much, but there's a kind of like earthy nature beauty to it.
Yeah.
Just because you're in Hampstead and you've got these older buildings that it sort of strikes as maturity that, you know, the world that she's sort of living in.
Well, that's great actually, and sort of wanted early on there was a sort of feeling that Mr. Wallaker, you know, played by Chiwetel, has a sort of Britishness about him. He brings to, you know, him
extreme Britishness.
Yeah, he's and he's the sort of the one that leads her out of the city and into the gorgeousness of the Lake District. And I mean, if we're talking about a story about a woman that starts in her basement, you know, it's only with Mr. Wallaker that she ends up in like this vast sort of landscape looking around. And yeah, so that was all part of her journey.
I've always sort of found that as I love watching films, I love making as well, but I always just think it adds so much when you can take someone on a physical journey as well as just a metaphorical or an inner journey, and by taking her out on that thing, it's almost like, you know, she's going out into a new frontier internally and externally, and that's, I don't know, I think it does carry more weight in terms of when you're watching something like that, because it's expansive in a way.
It wants to be, and even if I think you're right, your analysis is spot on, but even if you don't stop in the movie and take it apart like that, I think somehow, especially in this film, that journey sits at a very particular point. It comes just after she has, one might say is like literally let go of something in our biggest wide shot of the film. And it's right after that she. So really, what I wanted to sort of convey is she's now ready for that next thing.
Yes, yeah.
And it wasn't that unlike other perhaps other rom-coms, and particularly certainly like the first Bridget or something, it's not about like she's in a love triangle. She's not in a love triangle unless you include Mark. Like she's not ready to find something to move on to until she's really ready for it. And it doesn't like the fact that one of these men might not be right for her has nothing to do with the fact that she fancies the other guy more. It's to do with where she is as a person in her life.
And I think that's that's really apt. And also I suppose it's this idea of when you go out of your comfort zone, that's when recovery or growth can happen. And it really sort of felt like that, sort of her coming into her own and putting herself out there, and then that sort of confidence and that relationship builds very nicely.
Exactly.
This episode is brought to you by Perfect Bistro Cat Food. Cats, this ad is for you. Has your human ever called you picky, persnickety, choosy? If so, Perfect Bistro Cat Food is for you. With ingredients like wild-caught tuna and pasture-raised lamb, tantalizing textures, and delectable flavors that meet even the most discerning cat standards. You're not picky, you're just perfectionists. Perfect Bistro, mealtime perfection for every cat. Have your human visit perfectbistro.com.
So I mean, let's just talk a little bit about do you like to rehearse? How did you sort of work with the kids? Those are probably two good places to.
Yeah. In fact, very much. Like we definitely will rehearse. It depends. To be honest, it depends on the scene and the project. So this was a very different experience from To Leslie. My last film, we only had 19 days to shoot the whole film.
Yeah.
And we're shooting on film, and because of that, I embraced a much more kind of, I guess, sort of European sort of way to make films, which was no marks on the floor, no in-depth rehearsals, discussion with Andrea Riseborough. Beforehand, we were always lockstep on the same page, and Larkin, who was on, my cinematographer, was operating. We knew where the light source was going to be, and we just went. So a lot of times in that film, what you're seeing is either first take or second take, and it's just like we're capturing that kind of moment, Yeah. In this film, because it's just naturally there's more moving parts, there's more. The sets are bigger. Sometimes the lighting. I tried to capture as much of that as possible. My brilliant cinematographer Susie Lavelle. Much like Larkin, she holds the camera as well, so she's operating and lighting.
Great.
And she and I were absolutely partners through prep. So she understood, as I did, just what we were going for in every single scene and setup. That really helps. We would rehearse partly because you just want to not have to go again for technical reasons, and it's
especially with a bigger crew, because you can just. I mean, it does seem to be the way. I mean, when I sort of first walked onto a big set, it's like you spend so much time rehearsing. You're like, why are they spending all this time when they could be shooting and shooting and shooting? Yeah. But then when you go through the indie thing, you realize actually I have been shooting and 60% of it doesn't work in the way that I wanted because there's this little error or this little error that you're fixing.
You realize, every time you're on a set, I think, with how many, it's like a Swiss watch, isn't it? Like how many parts go into that second hand going round.
Yeah.
And, simply to give the sound department their frame lines, it still blows my mind, by the way, how the spatial awareness of boom operators, how they can literally take one glimpse at a shot, which is moving through space, tilting up, tilting down, and they know
how not to come into
it, and when to get in and when to come out.
Yeah.
But in order to do that sort of magic, they do need to see the shot. It's impossible otherwise. That's one, focus pullers do everyday magic time after time, but they have to know, are we going to have a lean forward? Are we going to race towards the camera? So you do a bit of rehearsal there, but your time is very limited when you're working with young children anyway. So it's about accelerating the rehearsal as much as possible, and then I think adjustments. I mean, that's
just adjustments. And I suppose it's just making sure everyone understands the brief of what the scene is, and when there's a lot of emotional depth, you've probably gone through a lot of that sort of in advance as well.
Well, I was very lucky because the two children that we have are both have just, what do they call it? Like emotional EQ or whatever. They're extremely advanced in their emotional intelligence.
They are. Yeah,
and so they both had Mila and Casper both had a very strong feel for what these scenes were, and fortunately, Renee, Casper, and Mila and myself were able to rehearse all of their key scenes before we started shooting, and we could really sit down at a table. And they're young kids, but they were totally on board for this. Sat down, and we had just in your own words type discussions about what do you think it means, Casper, when you what do you think you're feeling at the beginning when she's saying goodnight to you, and you don't want to be part of the goodnight story, but then you do. And he totally understood. He was just like, I miss my dad, but I'm also kind of, I don't want to show it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so as soon as that's enough. I mean, for sure, that's enough of an idea to hang the beginnings of a performance on.
Yes.
Because if you see in the film, one of the loveliest things about Casper in this is that he is like a young Mark Darcy, and he really almost never smiles in the film until he gets to a point where he can, and then he's all smiles.
Yeah. And I love the way that the two children, how they almost represent different sides of grief as well. You've got one that's very withdrawn and really sort of struggling with it and putting on a brave face, and the other one sort of has the Renee sort of charm and happiness, but it's under there certainly, and I think that works really well.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. And then partly it's because Mark died 4 years before the start of the film, and so Mabel, who's played by Mila Yankovic, didn't really know. She knew him, but not really. Didn't have that. So she's the one at the beginning going, "You're going to be my new daddy." Like she's like, "Why don't I get a daddy?" Everyone gets a daddy.
More exploration.
Like I'm ready for another thing. Whereas Billy did know him, and Billy is very nervous about moving on.
Did anything sort of majorly change? I suppose maybe through the shooting, editing process, did you need to do any pickups or tweaks once you'd got the film done, as opposed to how it was in the script?
Well, we part of the long development of the script in this particular case meant that long development periods can be difficult and heartbreaking, and because you just want to get going, you just want to make the film, and anytime you're not making the film, there's going to be a million ways for you never to be able to make the film somehow. But one of the pluses is you do get to
real until you're actually on set.
Exactly. But you do get to refine all these moments. So I feel like we were quite close by the time we started shooting. Our table read script was quite close. We didn't have to do any pickups or any reshoots or anything like that. But the first cut of the film,
box in the director column.
Oh, I'm so happy about that. Well, frankly, we wouldn't have had time anyway, because we had to get it finished quite quickly. For it to come out now. But fortunately, we didn't have to. But the first cut of the film that I was really, really excited about was over 2.5 hours. So we did have to do that terribly difficult process of interrogating what that cut was. How can we keep the essence of what's really important and let things go? And there are some really wonderful little bits and a couple of sort of comic runs which had to go, unfortunately.
Sometimes that's it, especially with comedy, like losing the jokes is often one of the most important bits to making it funny, because if you overdo the jokes, then you lose them on the other side, and it's that balance, I suppose.
It's a real lesson, and this is where having a great editor. So Mark Day, who edited this, I mentioned he did About Time as well, but there's not many editors who on their sort of CV have About Time, Ex Machina, and all like half of the Harry Potters. Do you know what I mean? Like he's such a brilliant artist. He's really done it all, but in a brilliant way. And like all editors, he's able to sort of see the forest and the trees. The very smallest, like frame by frame adjustments together will, once you add those up, will literally affect the kind of bird's eye view of the whole film. And so together we sort of you start to understand more how much you can get rid of and still keep the film. You know?
So let's just go a little bit back to your leanings of high-end TV and that. I mean, it looks like you sort of hit the ground running. I mean, based on your IMDb at least, like you went into TV with Calista Flockhart and I mean, some really good shows. And then obviously Better Call Saul is like one of the most smart, well-regarded shows in sort of recent history. How did you sort of get into that? Like, what was the the sort of redacted start point of how you got to that first opportunity, and then I suppose Better Call Saul?
Well, I mean, everybody has different ways in, or the different, I should say, different stacks of luck that you happen to get or not get. For me, I had trouble or luck or both. Yeah. To me, I was a theatre director here in London, and then I moved to New York and did a season of new plays. And one of the one of the new playwrights that I worked with, who's I think one of the top playwrights in America, actually, is this John Robin Bates. And I was lucky enough to direct the premiere of a play of his. And that play had been commissioned by a theatre in Los Angeles. So we were out, which is not known for theatre, but we were out in Los Angeles and did that play. And it's someone from ABC was there and was like, oh, we want a show that's a bit like this play. So they went to Robbie and said, will you write us a TV show? And Robbie, God bless him, said, yeah, but I'm doing stuff with Michael. Are you right with Michael? And they were like, Michael? Yeah, sure, I don't care, as long as you'll say yes. And so Robbie and I together worked on this thing that became this show called Brothers and Sisters. And that was like at the beginning of, as you said, great actors. Matthew Rhys came over to do it. Calista Flockhart, Sally Field, Rachel Griffiths. It just goes on and on. And so from there, that taught me an enormous amount, because they were still making 22 episodes a season. So that's a huge amount of
really putting in the hours of expertise. And
it taught me a lot about, that was like film school for me. And then from there, I was able to, fortunately, I mean, it's too long and too specific a story, but I will say that that there are certain sort of great people behind the scenes, and one of them is a woman called Melissa Bernstein, who was, once you look her up, she produced Breaking Bad, she produced, and then Saul after that, but also this wonderful show that I got involved with called Halt and Catch Fire, that she also produced. And it was through Melissa that I was able to meet the group of people that I'd later join and partner with for Saul.
Was there any like one big thing that you learnt from doing that series?
Saul,
because it is such a smart show, and it's there's so much, like, especially visual filmmaking and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There's an awful lot that working on something like that teaches you. So to narrow it down, I think it comes down to a word that you used at the beginning of this, and another one. The word you used was kindness, and I would say that Vince Gilligan and his entire team, and Peter Gould, who co-created that show, they lead with kindness. And it sounds anodyne, and I know that people might roll their eyes. I really mean it. There's ways of doing. It's very stressful to make any kind of film or television. It's always pressure. Yeah. And so if you lead and set a tone of kindness, and I try and do it on set, I think you allow every part of the show to be better. Yeah. And that was true on that show. And the other one was to respect your audience.
Yes.
They would, anytime any filmmaker, myself included, would go, this is really subtle, guys. Like, I think we need a line to understand what's... They would say, I promise you, our audience will understand. And I've taken those two lessons.
Yeah, I think especially, I mean, the kindness thing is just so encompassing, but also especially when you're going for perfectionism, it really does help. I think we've got to wrap up. Okay. Do you have like a 30-second soundbite on just advice to young filmmaker?
So I think to a young filmmaker, there's so much to say, but I guess the biggest thing is, and you might hear it from others as well, is make something. Make it. Don't be a prisoner to it being not good enough. This is a thing that's hampered me at the beginning, especially writing-wise. Do it. You have the tools. If you're listening to this podcast, you have the interest. I guarantee you have the passion and the talent. The only thing that will stop you making films is not making them.
Yeah, very good advice. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks. Pleasure's mine. Thank you.
Thank you.
There we have it. Wasn't that interesting? Michael Morris, just coming from TV and coming from his background, where he came from, how it's all about, your connections, how relationships matter so much as a filmmaker, as a director, as a creative. If you don't have those connections, you can't move forward. And moving forward is so important for you as a filmmaker to do it now. So reach out to someone this week. Say hello. Remind them you're around. Send them something you've done or something you're thinking about or an idea. Why not? If you already have got past that stage, then push harder to make it happen. If you're not doing it, no one's going to do it for you. I've said this so many times, the cavalry is not coming. You are the cavalry. If you want to make your film, your TV show, your documentary, your project, go do it. Literally make it happen. Grab it by the scruff of the neck. And if those people around you or the people you want as part of your team aren't doing that, then you need to do something about it. You're the one who needs to push harder. Maybe you need to make a change. But either way, it's about you focusing on what you want to do to get your projects made. Speaking of which, documentary myself and Dan Richardson made, Our Far Own Back, Getting Shit Done. Food for Thought is being released on the 28th of Feb, so it's a week and a half away now. Myself and Dan are going to do a podcast. I think Dom Lenoir is going to host that one for us, ask us questions about how we made it, how we raised the money, why we're self-releasing the film, and the importance of making something you care about as well. So that's Food for Thought, my documentary, out on the 28th. If you haven't yet, do me a massive favour, and I very rarely ask for favours, go onto our YouTube channel, Food for Thought Doc, and just give us a subscribe, because the feature will be there soon, and the more subscribers we have, the more likely more people are going to see this documentary. Okay, cool. Have a great week, whatever you're doing. I hope this has been inspiring for you. I've been Giles Alderson. As always, you've been listening to Dom Lenoir and the brilliant director Michael Morris talking about Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy, which is out in cinemas now. If you're lucky enough to rise up and do well, it is your duty to send the elevator back down. See you next Tuesday, everyone. Bye-bye.